I want to move to spray and pray. There's different models of venture. You can be concentrated or you can be spray and pray. Spray and pray, for those that don't know, is obviously having a broadly diversified portfolio, investing in lots of different companies rather than few with more money. There's always a question of, does spray and pray work? There was some data released by Carter. What did the data say, and how do we think about spray and pray today?
I disagree. I read the data. I also read, Jason, the blog post on SaaStr. I think your characterization of spray and pray is wrong, to be very direct. I think the data was awesome. Let's stop back with the comment. The Carter data was awesome and very pleasing. Stepping up, what it told people, for listeners, is they looked at all 547 2018 Series B investments, and then they did a histogram of where they come out in less than a 1x, 1 to a 2x.
Oh, that was Series B.
So 547, and then, 18% of them greater than a 5x, about 10% of them greater than a 10x. And one deal, Figma, returned 100x, right? And that's a pretty sizable chunk of information. What's it telling you, right? And, I found it really interesting because, in fact, we typically do A's and B's. And I was very happy, actually, by the way. It was exactly what the distribution for our fund model we think has to be, which is 30%. They were actually 35. We would have said 30, less than a 1x. We do wider buckets, 1 to 5x, 50%. They broke that into 2 buckets, and greater than a 5x, 20. So the distributions on 547 deals match pretty much what we're saying, right? That's a long answer. So if you hit those 3 buckets correctly, the blended return, I know it from our fund model, is 3.7x gross, 3x net to the LP, right? So if you look at that business, if you look at all those things and you get you get enough slots in the buckets, right? In each of the buckets, the good buckets, the 5x bucket and the 10x bucket, you end up with a 3x net to the LP. So the first piece of good news is, if you do it right, the return was available to you. The interesting thing is, to your point, is the right strategy spray and pay? And I don't think that's what that's why I was jumping back on it. I don't think that's what it said. I mean, I think it says, you got to pick very carefully, because obviously if you do a lot of deals, but I mean, Jason picked on looking at the same data, Jason picked on the negative, which is 2/3 of all deals are less than a 2x, which means they just don't help. Correct, Jason? That was the point you made in the blog, right?
Yes.
And what it says is picking is so important, because if
But did it say that?
No, your blog didn't say that, but I think the data says that.
But first of all, you're right. I mean, to me, the data was shocking to someone that is a concentrated investor, because this is scary risk for me. But it did blend out to 3x net, plenty good, right? So you're right, and. But at Series B, everyone thinks they're a great picker, don't they? This isn't pre-seed. Everyone's a great picker at Series B, right? So does everyone have the same logarithmic distribution across these deals, or I don't know.
No, they probably don't. I mean, I wouldn't say everyone. I'd say 3 things. Everyone thinks they're a great picker. Not everyone is a great picker. But the third sentence is, you have to be a great picker to win. Right? Because if you look, I was thinking at it, you kind of articulated those 2 strategies. You can, again, faced with this opportunity set of 547 Series Bs in 1 year, right? It's a very clear data point, right? And I think if you don't pick, if you're not a good picker, you will end up with more. Remember, to Jason's did a different set of buckets, but his buckets are more scary. He said 2/3 of all these deals are less than a 2x. If you skew, and that's on average, if you skew, instead of 66%, if you skew 75, 80% in that less than 2x bucket, your math doesn't work. And it's not that hard to be that bad, because on average it's 66%, is my point, right? It requires a fair amount of discipline and picking to pull this off. I don't think the spray and pay strategy would work here. It might work at seed. I'm not as familiar with seed. But here, the cost of spraying just gets too high. The picking doesn't work. The only way it doesn't, and I can see Harry doing his I don't agree face, is I think there's actually 3 approaches. There's picking, there's spraying, and then the third one, which is someone big like Andreessen can do, which is optioning, right? You can spray if you have if you're just doing options. But if you spray, and that's the only way you make your money, the probability of being wrong is just too high.
So that's exactly what I was going to say, which is actually in reference to an amazing graph that was released a month or so ago about seed bets by multi-stage firms. And Andreessen did 72 seed bets compared to Score in number 2 at 27. And exactly to your point there, Rory, you said you can't win without being a great picker. I'm not saying Andreessen are not great pickers. I'm not saying anything against them, but you can if you have 72
Agreed.
option bets.
Agreed. There are three strategies. There's spraying, picking, and optioning. Right. And to do the optioning strategy, and because the beauty about when you can option, you can afford to spray more. Optioning allows you to spray more, right? You're exactly right. No, I think it's super clear at every stage. And again, it goes back to structurally. I mean, once upon a time, you thought seed was all about option value and anything beyond that wasn't. Because we're dealing with gargantuan sums of money, it is now plausible that for some people, A's and B's are partially option. And really, if you're going to deploy 200 million in the growth round, you don't want to be totally slipshod at the A and the B, but you can think of it as more option value.